Oh, hi. I did see you there. It's just that I've been trying to ignore you, interrupting my summer vacation on my very real private island beach paradise. Summer's basically over now, you say, and I have to get back to work? Over my already dead and disembodied body? Fine, I hear you. I guess it's time I tell you about every show this summer season regardless of their value. After all, it's just you and I out here. Alone. So sit back, lounge in the sun, and I'll regale you with tales of me sitting around, gut hanging out, watching Japanese cartoons all day. So, let's go. Sounds fun, right? Teasing Master Takagi-san. No, wait a minute. When will Ayumu make his move is what happens when you guys just keep asking for more Nagatoro. This is a perfect example of a show that forms itself into existence when the market sees a working formula, in this case these gimmicky niche person meets another romances I keep talking about every video, and boils it down to only the skeleton of its predecessors, creating not a delicious bowl of pasta, but instead unseasoned spaghetti. And by delicious pasta, I mean a not very complicated in the first place idea that mostly sucked the first time anyway. I think anime creators aren't able to not do this constantly. Like clockwork, if an anime catches on, there is a tidal wave of bastardization. And I know you could probably say this about a lot of things where money is a priority, but holy fuck does anime do it literally. Like to the point where titles are just tropey keywords strung together like a faceless doll. It's about Urushi Yaotomi, a girl who wants to run a shogi club at school, and a comically stone-faced guy, Ayumu, who comes onto Urushi as bold-facedly as possible, only to deny her reciprocation because he believes he is only worthy of asking her out if he can beat her in shogi. Episodes revolve around these two doing a never-ending back and forth of Ayumu saying something like, "You have very defined facial features and a soft-looking pussy," to which Urushi responds, "Eh?" and blushes, and then do it again about 20 times until the credits roll and I put the gun down. You know what'd be fucking cool? If they made like 11 more episodes of this. It's so unfortunate that it's only one episode that I'll ever see for the rest of my life ever. You know, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's incredible to me that this show is so fucking boring that I actually find the guy to be more well developed as a character. With him, there was an idea. He looks like this all the time and he says really direct shit. But with girl character, she's somehow so undefined that I can barely tell you what makes her her own character besides likes shogi. Otherwise, we're left with a squealing kind of tsundere thing. What happened? You're supposed to make the girl who everybody won't shut the fuck up about. I don't really feel like spitting that the character designs are nondescript. Everybody looks kind of unique, but I generally think they look kind of ugly, like significantly worse versions of last season's Tsubaki. Anyway, if you like half-eaten shit, eat up, you fucking animal. Taking a step in the right direction, wanting to make a show I haven't seen before, is My Stepmom's Daughter is My Ex. With a title like that, what could possibly go wrong? Imagine this. It's a story of two former lovers forced to be near each other all the time, constantly serving to remind each other of what soured their relationship and the little things they do that just reignite that pain over and over. And then, glimmers of melancholy start to jump around. She starts to remember some of the reasons she fell for him from the start, yearning for what used to be when all she wants to do is run away now, but can't. It's almost tragic. There is some genuine feeling there, and maybe, just maybe, with time, these two could learn to forgive each other and give it a second chance. Kind of nice sounding, right? Well, God forbid one of these anime things be acceptable to talk about in public. Imagine this one. Try recommending this to your friend who doesn't know much about anime. So it's about a guy and a girl who used to date, right? Then they're like forced to be around each other and it gets real rocky, but you don't see a lot of anime about getting together again after a breakup, so maybe this one could really go somewhere. Oh, but there's just this one little thing. Just one thing you have to look past. It's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of an anime thing. See, they're kind of also step siblings now, and there's a lot of talk about them being family with each other, and the first episode shows them fighting about who gets to be the older sibling. Yeah, the whole incest thing you might have heard about from anime before. No, I mean, I'm not into that, but I do watch a lot of anime and have for years, but I'm not like that. You just gotta look past it, then it's good, I promise. What do you mean we don't think we should hang out anymore? For the love of God, why can't this just be not fucked up? You almost had me going there. Almost. Alright, I'm not gonna explain this one too much, it's really not worth it. Engage Kiss is like a completed checklist of a show perfectly designed for an ADHD-riddled 14-year-old. It's trying to throw as many ideas in your face as possible with no regard for logic in the process of writing it. The anime equivalent of jingling keys in front of you to entertain you with nothing but pure stimuli so you can ignore the overly complicated background details. I could barely follow this one, but it's about demon slayers, a guy and his super epic demon girl who loves him, girlfriend who kicks all the other demons' asses and is totally down for sex. And then to make her even cooler, they do this, and it's really fucking epic and pretty fucking hot. Like, Gotta yank my collar here. And then they fight the fucking demon, who, to be fair, looks pretty cool, and the fight is well animated and the music is actually rad. But like, they really just fucking kill him. And also, it's really sexual. He's got a really hot ex who's rich and buys him stuff, and the ladies are fighting over him. Fuck yeah, my underdeveloped brain can hardly keep up with this fucking cool shit. I'm going to come. Okay, that's the review. Fuck you. Let's talk about something a little more thoughtful in design. Instead of jumbling every idea possible into a show hoping to catch your ever-fleeting attention, Call of the Night chooses a more deliberate approach to setting its stage. Ko Yamori is a boring-looking main character who suffers from insomnia and struggles with feeling kinship around others, showing no understanding or real interest in things like dating. Sneaking out of the house to wander the city streets at night, Ko finds himself feeling some level of rare peace, but still he's downcast concerning his sleeplessness. Ko's heart races as he heeds the ignorant advice of internet dwellers and buys alcohol illegally in the hopes that it may serve as a hypnotic. But as soon as he commits to the purchase, he's confronted by a strange wayfarer, Nazuna Nanakusa, who strives to help Ko discover the freedom of the night. She also invites Ko into her house because she has candy and puppies and his mom is in the hospital and she's here to take Ko to see her. Then when Nazuna tries to assist Ko in sleeping, the purported reason she took him back to her apartment, it's revealed that she's a vampire and she starts vampiring him. However, Ko gets up immediately and asks what the fuck she's doing and if he's going to become a vampire now. Nazuna responds telling him that no, he won't become a vampire because vampires only make vampires when a vampiree loves said vampire enough to become a vampire. Which is to say, he would only become a vampire if he loved her. But after tasting what it means to be a creature of the night, a liberated person without inhibition, Ko sets his sights on finally understanding what it means to desire others, and tells Nazuna that he's going to try and fall in love with her. Nazuna, hesitantly intrigued by a human taking such an interest in becoming like her, states that she will do nothing but her regular behaviors, but continues to guide Ko into her carefree lifestyle. It's a bit vague what the story wants to tell us when it uses night as a metaphor for freedom. Yes, it's easy to understand that night is the time when routine life ends and partying, drinking, and social norms are loosened, if not thrown out altogether, but for Ko, I believe the theme of night is more symbolic of his eventual transition in character from a closed-off, tensed-up, and depressive person to somebody who can express himself, learn to enjoy what's around him, and let himself be who he really wants to be, with Nazuna being a physical catalyst for this. Ko will learn with her help to feel as calm and unconstrained as the night itself. Also, being all down with the nightlife makes people taste better, according to Nazuna. To some degree, I have mixed feelings about Call of the Night. I think it's an overall fantastic production, but it's a story that leaves me both needing to know what it hopes to communicate, but doesn't quite bewitch me with its general premise. While it's a romance, I would assume, not my favorite topic in anime, it seems to aim for a journey of growth rather than your typical high school romance for the sake of itself, thus being an improvement in its genre. Circling back to its production, it really looks great. So much smooth animation with a ton of little visual quirks to highlight the tone of its scenes. I particularly like when Ko screams stranger danger and tries to run out of Nazuna's apartment before she exaggeratedly outstretches her arm to pull him back in. Very One Piece-esque in panel perspective. However, nothing is more impressive than this show's setting, its portrayal of the night. It's impossible to ignore the backgrounds, and for good reason. In fact, many frames are set up to be more atmosphere than character solely to highlight this new universe you've stepped into when traversing the night. The city is beautiful, but more eye-catching is the bold use of color to emote for the viewer. The screen becomes flooded with color to enhance your sensations from scene to scene. For example, when Ko first experiences the night, the world is gentle and purple, reflecting his newfound serenity. This is brought back to us when the full breadth of the night is demonstrated for Ko as Nazuna flies him over the skyline. But when Ko tries to buy alcohol, unsure and anxious, his blood pumping and his palms sweating, the world is suddenly blindingly and abrasively yellow, following along with the motif as he decides on a golden lager to procure. Not to be dismissed, the music plays an important role here, reprising its hip-hoppy style throughout while shifting dynamically in timbre and tempo depending on the current events. And while I don't love Ko's appearance, the show follows our typical trend of making the girls stand out a whole lot more. Nazuna is certainly appealing in design, however I think for me it's because she looks like Himiko Toga's happier older sister, and I love Toga. Actually though, I'd find it hard to believe that our author didn't look to Toga for inspiration here, and while I won't complain, I think Toga is a perfect character to model someone after, and it'd be unfair to say nobody can be influenced by other people's work. It is kinda close, and I wouldn't be upset if Nazuna's design stood out a little more on her own. Considering this is the same guy who made Dagashi Kashi's Hotaru Shidare, a character with crazy amounts of personality in her design, it's understandable if it's difficult to make a main girl this original twice. I mean, she's got the Byojaku eyes, the fangs, the light-colored hair with the bangs and the braids in the same position as Toga's buns. She's got a wonky personality dead set on never letting society stop her from being free, and while less violent, she's also a vampire. I don't know, it might be a coincidence, but Toga's been popular for so long, I'd be shocked if she never crossed this guy's mind. Again, can't blame him on this one. Toga crosses my mind a lot too. Somewhere between a deliberate setup and a complete pile of nonsense is Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. It's like an anti-shonen where the protagonist is a pessimistic asshole who doesn't care about anything instead of a driven hero. Yuhi Amamiya is that protagonist, and oh boy, am I getting sick of seeing this boring male lead shit. Thankfully, he's kind of funny with how little of a fuck he gives when he's told by a tiny alligator that the world is about to be destroyed by an evil mage using a trillion-ton hammer in the sky to smash Earth like an egg populated by 7 billion something idiots. The majority of the first episode is spent watching the lizard try to convince Yuhi to do anything useful while he fucks around with his new green lantern ring that projects his soul as a physical blobby he can do stuff with. Yuhi's first question when given this power, by the way, is if he can kill someone with it. Oh great, you gave the fucking school shooter a magical weapon. Just great. Lizard says we gotta find the princess and the rest of the knights so we can fight the bad bitch, and most of the other knights, it seems, are also a bunch of fucking useless talking animals one could throw around like a football, except for like the dragon and the unicorn things. Those might be able to kill someone. Then the enemy shows its beautiful face. A fearsome golem who all but 3 of the knights stand no chance against fighting alone. And before Yuhi is vibe checked into oblivion, the golem is beaten down by his neighbor, Samidare Asahina, who turns out to be the very princess the lizard is looking for despite her literally being next to him earlier in the episode. She tells Yuhi about the Doomsday device, the Biscuit Hammer, the mage's most powerful golem, presumably meaning it also has a little pair of googly eyes. And to reiterate her trust in Yuhi, she jumps off a building to kill herself should Yuhi not stop her. He does, and then Samidare announces her objective, that she will destroy the Biscuit Hammer herself and be the one to ultimately destroy the planet in its stead. Yuhi, who fucking hates everybody anyway because his grandfather put metaphorical literal chains on him in his youth telling him to trust nobody ever, swears his fealty to her and finally becomes a knight. It's not the most unique idea in the world, but it does have a lot of silly and new elements to it that make me unsure why this show is getting kind of shit on so quickly. What's not to like about a bunch of dumb animals calling themselves warriors despite no indication that they are, wanting to fight a band of fish-faced demon blobs in their big fat fucking world-ending hammer? Is it kind of stupid? Yeah. Are you fucking stupid for thinking that it shouldn't be? Also yes. Get over it, nerd. The one about the big hammer with the shitty main character designs is more fun than the ones about the shitty main character design fucking a bunch of ultra-dimensional whores. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle in because it's that time of the season again. It's time to stay inside and look at some grass because we are about to get into some serious spectating. Sports spectating, that is. Time for shoot, goal to the future. Looking at this one, I don't think anybody would fault you if you immediately turned around and ran away thinking to yourself that there's no way in hell this isn't just the same soccer anime you just saw 4 times this year already. In actuality though, this is like a sequel or a remake of Toei's Blue Legend Shoot from the 90s, adapted from an even more 90s shonen manga. This only occurred to me about halfway through the episode when the principal or somebody starts reminiscing about the old school's team Great Success, flashing images of drastically different looking anime boys across the screen. That being said, I'ma keep on kicking the ball for this one because it is truly something special. I imagine that being a 90s manga about sports meant it was a bit cartoonishly dramatic, let's say. I also imagine that when it came time to review the old series in preparation for this one, that's the only part the team differentiated. The way people act in this show, you'd think a soccer ball killed their parents. Hideto Tsuji was once a soccer player, but deep down he knows what he really was back then. A fraud! A fake! A fucking buffoon to even think he could ever kick a ball in the right direction. Ever since that one time he fucking lost, he knows he can never return back to that world. Not since the accident. He watches with pity as these poor wretches continue on fruitlessly playing their little game, ignorant to the truth that they suck wiener at it and will never amount to anything. But Hideto is better than that. He's already learned his lesson once. Soccer is a dead end, a lose-lose game destined to leave its pawns soulless shells of their previous selves. And this guy takes notice of that commiserating look in Hideto's sunken eyes. That fucker's mocking him, isn't he? So Joe Kazuma, who I'm pretty sure doesn't know Hideto, runs up to him after the game and goes ballistic, slamming him against the wall and screaming at his face about how much he doesn't like being laughed at by some stupid fucking bystander. And while Joe would probably be better at the game if he was keeping his eye on the ball instead of counting how many people were watching him blow it, Hideto essentially agrees that viewers are assholes, but instead yells back about how he doesn't care about soccer. He doesn't, he swears, and that's why he's shaking and crying and pissing his pants. With some real small PP energy, Joe challenges him to a soccer game thing in an attempt to prove to Hideto that it isn't just some fucking game, and it's actually really hard to kick the ball. Hideto proceeds to have flashbacks about his almost certainly dead friend, who must have gotten killed in a horrific accident, before actually throwing up from the anxiety of it all and panics. Don't drag me back into this fucking game. This entire thing basically happens again at school when Joe learns that his team is basically being dissolved because he sucks so much, followed by him taking it out on Hideto again, who this time agrees to the challenge. This is after, by the way, a mopey Hideto is seen being asked by some children to kick the ball back to them so they can keep playing. The kids, becoming visibly confused by this madman, watch as their simple request almost pushes this guy to violence. Alas, he holds back back his desire to strangle these kids before they too realize how much pain soccer will inevitably cause for their entire families. Anyway, the challenge goes real shit for Joe, who can't stop a ball if his life depended on it, in part because Hideto is, of course, really good at kicking the ball, albeit not visibly, indicated by Joe's team calling him the biggest pussy alive for being this bad. Then some legendary player from the old show is asked to be their coach, and he shows up opening with a tirade about the team sucking sack, Hideto being useless if he doesn't play, a threat to abandon these 15-year-olds if they don't meet his expectations immediately, and other verbal abuse. Package all that up and you have one of the most intense 20 minutes of my life. They seriously made it clear that every scene in this show needs to be histrionic. And you know what? It may look like shit dick, but fuck if it isn't funny. Easily more entertaining than like every soccer show ever. Do you ever just find yourself going about your day, and suddenly you feel an irresistible urge to go to Saitama? Have you ever thought about going to Saitama? Maybe what would help with that is going to Saitama. Spend money, go to Saitama, go now, go to Saitama. Musashino is the second season of a show that I only realized was a second season after watching 2 episodes. Thus, I will now criticize it based solely on my having watched some of the second season out of context. I wouldn't worry though, it's a short-form promotional show in collaboration with the tourism industry of beautiful Saitama, where you should go right now. It follows some VTuber-looking characters in a school club celebrating Saitama's beautiful trains, but their club is going to be shut down because they don't do anything in it. So they plan to enter a competition about trains, and a more put-together rival club appears to challenge them. Its main characters are almost incapable of facial expression, which kind of adds to the slice of life in under 4 minutes and therefore on crack to compensate feel. Along the way, the girls tell us about the sights and purchasable products of Saitama. Me, being a depressive weeaboo who daydreams every waking moment about fleeing the country and starting over in Japan, realized when they started talking about local food that it was working on me, and I do want to go to Saitama. You don't need to tell me about the food for me to want that, but it's working and your targeted propaganda is influencing my perception. I will go. Leave me alone, okay? You know, I got to thinking, and I said to myself, why are all these sports animes hyper-fixated on one random, often obscure sport? Why don't we just make a show about all of them? And it dawns on me, it's because it's not so much a sports show anymore if it has to focus on something else more vividly if the sports shows are constantly shifting. Extreme Hearts solves this impossible puzzle for us by also being an idol show simultaneously, definitely not diluting the concept further. Hiyori Hayama is an aspiring musician with a whopping 1 fan, kind of like me. However, she has a parasocial relationship with her fan because they also hang out IRL, which, if you know anything about being a girl on social media, will result in you being stalked and cannibalized by your fan, because every single person who watches anything on the internet ever is a violent maniac. Anyway, since Hiyori has no substantial following, her contract with a talent agency gets terminated, but her former manager throws in a piece of advice: she should join a big ol' sports competition, because the winner gets to plug themselves for the world to see, potentially leading to Hiyori's breakthrough. But this isn't just some regular shitty sports competition, it's extreme! All the players wear glowy super armor that makes them fast like Sonic and stuff. Not only this, but the sport they must compete in changes every day. Hence the thing I mentioned earlier about it being about all sports plus idols. So Hiyori decides she'll go ahead and break some bones playing Extreme Ball, but not without the protest of her fangirl who, like the guys in Shoot, has some serious trauma related to soccer because she fucking lost and doesn't want to see Hiyori go through that misery. Hiyori nevertheless says she has to do it regardless of the risks, which, now that I think about it, it's weird that Saki would think it's too risky to rely on sports for success, but it's totally fine with music, an equally unreliable and competitive career. Then Saki's friend hires some fucking robots to help Hiyori practice at soccer, basketball, tennis, flag football, jumping jacks, highlight, croquet, pin the tail on the donkey, asteroids, horseback riding, ballet. Alright, we're about to watch a teenage girl get fucking destroyed by robots at soccer. Actually though, the robots are like shitty NPCs that you play with when you have no friends in Mario Party, which is exactly what happens when Hiyori enters the preliminaries herself and must play against a team of 4 people while she's stuck with a team of dumbass computers. Then, after Saki and Saki's friend watch Hiyori get her shit pushed in, Saki on the verge of an episode, the pair decide to just fucking jump into the field and start playing with Hiyori to help her win. No registering to be on the team or anything. The robots just head for the sidelines like nothing fucking happened. You could just do that? There's really no rule against spectators tagging into the game? This world's so strange. It's like the future, right? But pretty much everything seems the same technologically except for extreme sports, where they have advanced human performance enhancement gear. It's actually called hypersports, but fuck you. Like, all the money that could have gone to researching more pressing scientific realms went straight into funding big fat fucking ball games. This is what happens when college sports gets their way. When the only study hall on campus is the broom closet beneath the third enormous arena. I stole that joke from my friend. Thanks. Anyway, show's not terrible. The characters could be a little more distinct from each other, but I don't have trouble remembering who's who or anything. Animation is nice and fluid during the sport ball segments. Can't really complain much, at least it's trying to be different. Although the driving idea behind it is kind of goofy for something that seems to take itself a bit seriously, but I mean, it's anime we're talking about. Who's shocked at this point? Speaking of ridiculous, do you ever think about how diving far enough into anime culture to the point where you'd be watching this video whittles away at your sensibilities until you're fully capable of watching a cartoon about little girls that are so cutesy they barely register as humans on a screen, but usually manage to swerve out of Uncanny Valley, and unironically taking it seriously if it has a serious story to tell you? Whereas for most people you'd probably know that aren't in your immediate circle of friends would probably ask if you're mentally ill if you started talking about it. It's honestly a fascinating situation to become aware of, and if that previous section sounded like I'm faulting you for it, I'm not. I'm describing how I feel, and I don't feel bad about it, but it is interesting, no? Well, maybe not, but Prima Doll is a fantastic example of what I'm talking about. It's basically Girls Frontline, you know, robot girls who fight wars with guns. You're following me. It's about those kinds of characters, but after the war. The conflict is over for the time being, and these robot girls are effectively veterans now. And to really nail that into you, they're fucked up about it. Like, suffer from similar symptoms you might experience with post-traumatic stress. Let me take a step back for a moment though, so you maybe see why, because I would understand if that feels like a bold claim to make. But I really do think it's part of what's trying to be expressed in this show. So Prima Doll, Haizakura, wakes up sometime after the initial battles she likely played a role in, finding herself in the basement of a cafe. Turns out the cafe is run by a human previously in charge of a unit of robot girls who has basically given those girls a job so they may continue living in a post-conflict world. To be more precise, the conflict is currently suspended and there's still somebody out there sending less humanoid robots, Mechanica, to attack the city under the guise of they're losing control and going on rampages. So Haizakura starts working there. She doesn't remember anything important anyway, and meets the other kind of tropey girls, all of which are at least content enough working here because they're programmed to feel like shit if they don't have a designated purpose. That's right, it's a cute girls doing cute things show, and it has something serious to say in the background of it all. So when they aren't doing slice of life stuff, we're learning something about the war, and it's often from the perspective of the other cafe employees. For instance, Gekka is, as I mentioned, a trope. She's the stoic one. She doesn't express herself much and tries to handle everything analytically, but that's not all, that's the thing. She's not just a trope. She's like this way to transform that trope into character development. Gekka was the leader of an intelligence recon team, so she had to be careful and logical so she could ensure missions are successful without being noticed. And then her whole team dies. She's left with the guilt, feeling like if she were a better leader, maybe they'd still be here. And now here she is. Battle's over. She served her purpose. Now she's just a robot. A fully sentient girl who can't stop being analytical. If she stops, bad things happen, you see. So she tells people she isn't capable of smiling. She's a broken robot. And while we do in fact meet Prima Dolls who likely took physical damage and are forever malfunctioning, injured from war you might just call it, there doesn't seem to be much physically wrong with Gekka. She's broken, yes, but not because she got shot, because she thinks and feels just like us, and now she's trapped in her past, slowly learning to come out of her comfort zone with the arrival of cheery and empathetic Haizakura. And it'd be enough to just call this a show demonstrating the personal horrors one must face even after a war, but we're not done yet. Prima Dolls must serve a purpose, and it's not only because they're made to do so, it's also because society says so. People around the cafe, people not taking care of these girls like the cafe owner, they don't see them as sentient life. They ask Haizakura and Gekka on an outing to buy eggs, what's your purpose then? Because a Prima Doll without a purpose is what? A girl? No, a useless robot. It almost comes off as innocuous too. The people like Haizakura, who claims to be a singer, but they demand more. It's their right after all to tell a robot what to do before Gekka gets her out of there. And what was a simple trip to buy something, a classic slice of life setup, turns into a challenge for the attentive viewer. Is it really ethical to make a robot capable of fighting and strategizing just like us, under the assumption they aren't human, so doing this saves a person from the trauma? But that's not entirely true, is it? Now you've created something alive, and just made more trauma. And now those girls are left to their own devices, veterans longing for a purpose. Our cafe employees, they're fortunate to have somebody who cares despite their backgrounds, because I'm not so sure other Prima Dolls are so lucky. Not only are they veterans, they aren't even seen as citizens. It's a surprisingly cyberpunk theme surrounding the ethics of advanced artificial intelligence, and it's all wrapped up in a nice little cute girl's slice of life package. Beneath that cozy layer, Prima Doll asks of us to question the future trajectory of technology. It's easy to empathize with them after all. They're cute girls doing cute things. Wild, it's the darndest thing. I think Lycoris Recoil might be pulling this same idea, although far more directly. Also a cute girls show, it's about a team of elite secretive government operatives who are orphan girls raised as assassins called Lycoris, who help keep the peace in Japan by peacefully erasing the existence of criminals before they pull anything. Demonstrated pretty hilariously in the intro. We follow Takina Inoue, a Lycoris from headquarters who decides to take matters into her own hands when a mission to prevent a black market arms deal starts to hit the fan. For disobeying orders and blowing the enemies into bite-sized last bits without getting important information, albeit saving her comrade in the process, she is demoted to work at, wouldn't you know it, a cafe. A cafe where a really famous licorice, one of the best they say, Chisato Nishikigi, operates out of to complete missions more tailored to individual citizens rather than society-threatening events. With Chisato and under the tutelage of Mika, Takina is to learn how to be a good girl and not just shoot every bad guy she sees on sight. Alongside them is Mizuki Nakahara, a borderline alcoholic licorice who desperately wants to be married off, and later elite hacksaw pro gamer Kurumi, who's probably my favorite, so I'm mentioning her, but won't say much more because it's the plot of the second episode and it's some fun exploits. But look at her little bow and her big forehead. She's so lazy and so smart. Actually, she's said to have been a notorious hacker for years now. What did she start coding when she was in the womb? Okay, for real, not saying any more about her situation though, but I have a rule in these where the first 2 episodes are fair game, so you're not allowed to slap me around this time. I mean, unless you really want to. I mean, I'd really not like that, but I mean, nobody could really stop you. I mention all these characters because I think they all generally stand out pretty well, each having personality traits that don't necessarily put them into a perfect box and allow them space to become more. They're also well designed without forcing too much dramatic variety in their features, which isn't always a bad thing, but it's definitely nice to see done somewhat subtly. The biggest exception for me as of now being Takina, who's deliberately flat in personality and design so that she can grow into somebody more well-rounded. But as a result, this makes her a weak competitor among her vibrant supporting cast. I'm just drawn to everybody else more. Who can argue? Takina's a dead shot, but Chisato can visually track somebody's hand movements so well she might as well be a Toho character. The action is engaging, the music is noticeably unique, the pacing is rapid yet consistent feeling, the animation is clean, especially when it involves guns, the crime mystery is coming together each episode enough to keep me guessing, and the slice of lifey aspects are just fine in their own right. And while not entirely clear to me, I find it difficult to believe there aren't some blows being thrown about the Japanese criminal system, an organization renowned for its low arrest rates, giving an illusion of Japan being extraordinarily safe and crime-free, but often anecdotally criticized for ignoring more difficult cases that may not lead to a certain conviction. Kind of romanticizes that process, but I'm a little convinced that's to demonstrate in parallel why someone like Chisato might feel uncomfortable using lethal force even if she has to do this job. I'm under the impression that while she believes she can do good for people as a licorice, she wants to do so in the least destructive way, taking issue with the establishment she works under. Good, we like to see establishments being questioned. What's the point of art if it doesn't piss off a government official anyway? More like Smile of the Arsnotoria. Something I didn't mention about Prima Doll is that I found the first episode to be shittily paced compared to the second, and it's because they tried to jam both the introduction to the setting and a supporting character's basis into the single installment. I feel like Arsnotoria might be the same, but unlike Prima Doll, I haven't bothered with the second episode yet because this show was significantly more rushed and lost my attention. First, it's a mobile game adaptation, and it's really trying to shove the mechanics into the plot. Our first 11 minutes are just a bunch of game terms being thrown around, and I only partially get it because I've played other gacha games. Like, gee, I wonder if this one sells you in-game items. I wonder if mana is the basic or premium currency. Then they hastily explain some hierarchy stuff about their magic school, which I scarcely followed. It's like the writers wanted to get this out of the way as fast as possible so they could move on to the Harry Potter read a different book slice of life. And so they do. We see the other girls, like this one here named Pikachu because she's yellow, and the story proceeds to smack us over the head with give or take 4 slice of life plots like can't open a jelly jar for biscuit time and I have a cool fucking umbrella, all jam-packed into the other half. Holy hell, I know I said comedy manga adaptations need to pick up the pace and maybe put 3 ideas into each episode, but Jesus Christ, this would have been 8 if not for the earlier part. Chill the fuck out, Arsnotoria. We have time, it's okay. Holy shit, the main girl's named Arsnotoria. I think I made it through the whole show without picking that up. And this girl, her name's Abra Melon. Shows names are amazing. Side note, Assface's hair is dumb, but I like that her Hoge does the chow question mark thing. Oh no, but what's this? The world's quietest genocide? The lightest sounding push to the floor ever? Led by the totally not Death Eaters, the he who shall not be named. That's right, it's the dreaded Zwingli! Zwingli! His name's Zwingli! That's just a sound you made up, Zwingli! But actually it's the name of a leader during Switzerland's Reformation apparently. But his name's still Zwingli! That's gonna be my firstborn's name, Zwingli. In the final years of the Edo period, a special police force known as the Shinsengumi was formed for around 6 years to protect the Tokugawa shogunate. Since then, there's been some anime and other media that portrays them because they were cool guys taken from sword schools to be extra good at killing people for their country. Like a samurai movie Navy SEALs thing, I guess. I looked most of this up. One such anime is Shine On, Bakumatsu Boys, and despite its name sounding like a boy band, it's still about the Shinsengumi, except they all died and were replaced with criminals who are allowed to atone for their sins by, as I said, killing people for their country. The first thing you might notice is that the characters look like they just got back from failing their Demon Slayer auditions and were picked up by a hungry scavenger talent agency. That agency, I suppose, would be Geno Studio, in this case, the studio responsible for Golden Kamui's adaptation and 3 other things I don't know anything about really. The one responsible for dressing our soldiers so colorfully would be Hiroyuki Takei, the mangaka for Shaman King and original character designer for this show, which will explain to you why this guy looks like the kid from Shaman King's ancestor. I'm still thinking they want some of that Demon Slayer money though, and to be fair, it's not doing a terrible job of trying. Unfortunately not beloved by all, Bakumatsu Boys does exhibit some very solid animation prowess, with fights that I was shocked to see were as well put together as they actually are. Not Demon Slayer pretty, but certainly of a higher endowment than a bunch of other shit anime. Demon Slayer has a glaring problem that I won't go into too much detail about here, and it's that Demon Slayer doesn't know how to shut the fuck up and let me see what's going on. It very constantly feels the need to explain to me every single thing on screen like I'm a toddler. In comparison, Bakumatsu Boys basically skips this thought entirely, instead being poorly paced in the other direction and running ahead so quickly, I barely understand who anybody is and what they're doing. However, I still do understand because it ultimately doesn't amount to much of anything outside of do this mission for the government or else. It's kind of awkward because of it, but in the second episode we run into some old acquaintance of the serial killer team member who looks like an egg and whispers as if trying to keep others out of his conversations, yet to no avail as shonen protagonist team member hears what's happening anyway, so like kind of funny overall. I'm thinking I might be done talking about this one, but if any of that sounded like an incomplete thought, write a comment about it and I won't read it. If you've ever watched RWBY Pride, Phantom of the Idol's premise will likely sound familiar, and that's because it's about a dead idol girl following a not dead idol related person around, this time an actual idol rather than the manager of one as in RWBY Pride. The dead idol is Asahi Mogami, a girl who really wanted to keep being an idol but couldn't due to the aforementioned dying, a statement that is repetitive because there really isn't much more to introduce you to immediately. She haunts Yuya Nyoto, a male idol who's mega pissed that this idol job comes with all kinds of work he didn't expect when he signed up. For the majority of his screen time, in fact, Nyoto can be seen either complaining about working or avoiding working, and while I agree with his sentiment wholeheartedly, and would also like to passively make money while sitting on my ass picking my nose atop a pile of doubloons, it becomes rather tiresome to observe him say it multiple times. Going through with the viewing, I was starting to think that this was a load of barnacles that would never entertain me. However, I was being a little hasty in my assessment and decided to watch 2 whole episodes so I could better grasp how this concept could possibly continue. It had already coalesced into Asahi possessing Nyoto's body to dance for him so he doesn't have to. She gets to be an idol and he gets to make money being a lazy douche, so what now? Well, most predictably is that Nyoto has to grow out of being a one-note PNG of a character into somebody who actually gives a shit about being an idol. And Asahi definitely feels this way, as in episode 2 she basically forces him to do some of the work, feeling maybe a little guilty that she's performing as somebody else and enabling Nyoto's negativity, as well as feeling a level of innate desire to see somebody succeed where she could not. And so with the threat of Asahi dying for real this time, leaving Nyoto alone to do everything by himself once more, he agrees to actually try and be an idol with Asahi's guidance. While one could probably see this entire solution coming a mile away, I had to be sure, and I was a little surprised to find I didn't hate it all as much as I started to feel early on. Nyoto's character is rapidly shifting, albeit struggling to do so internally, into a more driven person inspired by Asahi's story, and it's more than I can say for some other characters I feel have recently relied on this horrid personality baseline to ham-fist self-improvement, primarily because it doesn't linger on it for more than an episode, and because I prefer a lazy daydreamer to a total dickweed whose motivations I barely comprehend. Potentially worth mentioning is Nyoto's co-star idol Kazuki Yoshino, who adds almost nothing from what I can tell and is generally an empty-headed carbon copy idol boy that serves as the world's most meaningless sounding board to Nyoto, who's already equipped with Asahi. More importantly are these 3 idol fangirls, Nyoto's only real followers initially, who we get to see decompress every episode and drunkenly reflect on their obsession with the ever-changing Nyoto's performances. Their addition to the series provides a much-needed intermission from the regularly scheduled programming, giving more flavor to the presentation without overstaying its welcome to the point of self-sabotage like the Minions or some shit. I don't know if that made sense. Seeing as the show's title is a blatant homage to the stage opera of near-identical wording, I'd almost call the fangirls the show's comedy to the tragedy, except the whole show is leaning on comedy but lands it better using the side characters, sometimes. Relying even further on what some may call something resembling comedy is the maid I hired recently is mysterious, brought to us by the same original mangaka as Jahi-sama if you couldn't tell by his love of black-haired, shiny-eyed sable ladies. In this one, however, the forever minor is Yuri, a little Shota boy who the story revolves around. Now an impoverished young orphan who could never hope to pay the property tax on his inherited mansion in the middle of the woods because his parents didn't leave him much money I guess, Yuri finds himself alone once the previous servants of the estate head off for greener pastures, aka someplace that can actually pay them. Seeing as Yuri doesn't make much money or really even go to school, he essentially is left to await an eventual slow, painful death by starvation in an empty house. That is until Lilith materializes from the ether and invites herself in, offering to be his new no-cost in-house maid. Regardless of how many red flags the situation is frantically waving about what his parents should have mentioned concerning talking to strangers and definitely burglars, Yuri's like, sure, this sounds reasonable enough. Thus their life begins, just a small defenseless Shota and his adult dark-skinned woman attendant. That comes out sounding a lot worse than I'd hoped. Following this, every waking minute of Yuri's life advances as an endless sequence of him stalking her every move, lying to himself about how attracted he is to her relentlessly by asserting that something is totally fucked up here and she's definitely up to something. And while it's actually a good instinct to feel she might have underlying intentions considering she appeared from nowhere and could very well be manipulating him, in reality it's more the first thing I said about him screaming at her because she make pee-pee hard and he doesn't want to admit it. Just face it, kid, you gotta think for black girls. Anyway, she pretends to not understand what's going on and teases him about it, only to act like she didn't know when he gets further embarrassed about the whole thing and runs away repeatedly. In summary, it's about an anime one-san maid gently winding up a sexually frustrated small anime boy in the format of a single joke again and again. Shockingly, as a one-joke manga adaptation where I would expect them to make the whole episode 2 interminably drawn-out gag roll credits, it actually does like 4 or so instead, making the pacing endurable. And there's probably some sort of story about why this is happening buried under the setup if you wade through it for a while. You know, I think I'm starting to get this whole self-insert thing now. Yeah, like, what if that were me being lovingly harassed by a mature girl? Yeah, and what if the girl was maybe like more, I don't know, like this behavior and look? I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to watch that or be that. Could you imagine me being that position? Yeah, that'd be something, right? Like, not that I would do that though, probably. Yeah, no, that'd be crazy. Bastard is what you are. It's also an old manga that came out originally 1 year prior to Berserk, a manga I likely don't have to introduce to you, but is nonetheless highly influential. Bastard is also influential, perhaps to a lesser extent, yet when I look at some of the main characters I can't help but feel it's very possible Miura took some inspiration from his contemporary Hagiwara, although certainly there are many well-discussed predecessors to Berserk's overall conception. I did some surface level research that didn't exactly confirm anything for me, and really I don't know much of anything about Bastard, but considering the small span of time between the two and the characters' visual identities that appear uncannily similar, I think there's at least something there. Also of note is that Bastard is apparently a harem manga, kinda cringe, which probably puts it among some of the first to get the ball rolling on this misery. Thanks. Point is, this is a modern adaptation of it, kinda like how they make a Spider-Man movie every other week because money! Anyway, it's about Tia Noto Yoko and her little boy she is tasked with watching over, Lucian. Before that though, it's about some long exposition telling us the world is fucked up by this evil thing because people are shit or something. And then there was a good angel thing that fought it, and the narrator keeps going on with the poetry. What is the Dark Souls? Get on with it! So back to whenever this is happening, Tia and Lucian are among the people seeking safety as an evil wizard named after Ozzy Osbourne sieges the castle to kill this princess who doesn't wear a bra. Then Tia remembers that her sacred duty is to not have sex ever because she holds the secret spell that releases an even eviler wizard, Dark Schneider, from Lucian's soul because that's where he was forced to reincarnate. The spell, by the way, is her making out with the little boy, making this now the second anime of the season to emphasize tongue fucking to increase power level. Then Dan Schneider, Then Dan Schneider, upon said tongue fucking, kills the bad guy by making him explode, and then states that he will now conquer the world, which is prevented by the now oddly horny Tia kissing him again, returning him to a little boy momentarily and shifting the oddly horny into kinda fucked up horny. But like still though, could you imagine if that were me? Then episode 2, which I forgot significantly more about, has the evil headquarters send a test magician over yonder to see if it really is the return of the notorious Dark Schneider. When Magician's Hydra attacks, the townspeople spare no time in begging for Tia to just go to town on the kid's mouth so they won't die, which results in them being reminded that Dark Schneider has plans to kill them all. But some screaming from Tia sets him straight and he kills the Hydra and also doesn't kill Tia's dad, who by the way was instrumental in Dark Schneider's predicament originally. Now that this is way too long and probably boring you, I'll just say that it's like alright, watchable maybe, kind of reminiscent of old anime since it's supposed to be, and that's kinda nice. Like a simpler time where medieval fantasy didn't exclusively mean a beta male going to another world where everybody loves them, although it's not far off with the whole harem thing I hear about. Gotta say they really dropped the ball on the music here, I think. For a show that constantly references heavy metal music, you'd expect some heavy metal music, which is not the case almost entirely. Stylistically, I feel this deserves to look a lot more like an album cover overall to match the theme. I'm under the impression that a die-hard Bastard fan would probably evaluate this as an undermotivated attempt to revive a classic series, leaving mostly disappointment at the fact that we definitely have the technology to do better if this wasn't really just about cashing in as quickly as possible. Moving on to another adaptation is RWBY Ice Queendom, based on the popular Rooster Teeth web series RWBY, which in itself is heavily inspired by Ayumu and is well known for having kinda terrible voice acting and impressively choreographed fight scenes. Full disclosure, I've never seen more than maybe 3 episodes of the original RWBY, but it gives me a warm sensation in a way to see a Western internet-based anime become so prominent even in Japan that Studio Shaft decides it's financially viable to bump it up to really made in Japan TV anime. Frankly, anytime a cool internet thing gets to be on TV, it just feels like an acknowledgement from normal non-internet dwelling people that it has value, and it's easy to cheer for it as something of an underdog in the world, despite the reality that internet content is increasing in power by the second, and people are giving less and less of a flying fuck about television broadcasting. Congratulations, RWBY. I like to think fans of the series are feeling some of the same, and I'm sure Monty Ohm is beaming with joy all the way from hell, because that's where all anime fans go, no exceptions. Is that too mean? It's a joke. I'm a demonic spirit anyway, it's basically a compliment. I won't go into great detail about the plot, mostly because that'd be wrong anyway, but briefly it's about a world with both magic and science where evil monsters called Grimm are hunted by humans and human lookalikes who attend at least one big academy dedicated to sharpening the techniques of its students. There's 4 main girls, one of which is named RWBY, who all play important roles of some sort, but again, I'm uneducated about this. What I can say is that the music is really good, and I'm pretty sure it features a bunch of the original talents from the web series participating in the show's production. I'm told we might be missing out on some cool shit they cut from the adaptation, but episode 1 has at least one fight scene that's really invigorating to watch. With how complicated the plot sets itself up to be in the beginning, were this not a retelling of the original's first season, I'd be liable to write this off as a clusterfuck anime that'll never get its shit together enough for this to make any sense. But because it fortuitously goes deeper than that, I may learn the story of RWBY myself, if nothing else for having my respect in coming all this way to greet me. Wait, I was talking about comedy like 3 shows ago and didn't mention the one about stand-up comedy. So, Teppen is about stand-up comedy, more specifically group comedy called Manzai. It's so funny, in fact, that they refused to air the 2nd episode because they thought it might make people laugh till they die. Unfortunately, one really big and disturbed fan of the show heard this might happen and took it upon himself to aggressively express his frustration to the world by assassinating the former Prime Minister of Japan. The man just wanted to slow the country's decreasing population, and you shoot him with an improvised taped-together 9-barrel electric shotgun. And now nobody can watch the show. Great! Just so nobody can accuse me of propagating false information, that's not what really happened. But I'd be a sham of a content creator if I didn't at least mention that Teppen's 2nd episode was not released as of now, because it had something to do with an entirely unrelated assassination plot. Back to the existing topic, Teppen is about, let's see, 15 girls divided into 5 sub-unit comedy troupes, all competing to stay active in a comedy competition school thing. I don't really think I understood it. There's main group Young YY, who specializes in being normies, I think. Of note among them is Yomogi Takahashi, with a very cute soft color palette and an eternal Ubu:3 face. There's Celebrity, a group dedicated to being rich. Among them is Mako Shirakabe, who is actually not rich, a commoner disguised amidst the bourgeoisie, not so secretly ravenously scrounging for remnants of wealth to hilarious effect. Then we have Akudare Kingdom, originating from the Kanto region, who can be seen fighting in a grocery store because they can't find some specialty food from Ibaraki. That's all I remember about them. I'm sure they're lovely. Moving on, there's Bullet Kunoichi, who I would assume are ninja themed, but there's like a muscle girl who has a great moment with their gay meathead landlord. By the way, he's a thing, probably the best thing. Love these girls' designs and color palettes too, by the way. Finally, we have Invaders, a seemingly denpa group of girls focusing on aliens if you couldn't tell by the name. Really like their color palettes. Shihori Hokuto, especially, a young lady who can talk to aliens and hides the fact that they're right fucking there from her friends also searching for life on other planets. The cast is incredibly varied, and while I feel this show may suffer from an inability to give enough screen time for each girl to really shine, maybe I'm stupid and don't know what I'm talking about. It actually does just fine splitting its runtime between 5 groups. I think in my winter 2022 video where I talked about Q, I compared this sort of thing to Idolmaster, which I always saw as a good example of a series where the overabundance of characters, while not handled atrociously, inevitably holds some of the girls back, and it's better suited as a game where you can take your time getting to know everybody for hours on end. So I'm under the impression Teppen is something like that. In conclusion, like in an essay in middle school, in conclusion, it's a slice of life cute girls doing cute things plus comedy performer series. So like, if that sounds good, there you have it. If Teppen's profuse cast isn't breakneck enough for you, and you're looking for something rapidly paced enough to induce vomiting by trying to read its subtitles without pause, Doomsday with My Dog is great for that. However, it is basically just a voice-acted rendition of the manga, moving only from panel to panel. It's perfect for those of us too fucking lazy to manually turn pages while reading. Knowing nothing more about the manga outside of its cover art, I anticipated it being something kind of cute, maybe slow, about a girl wandering the post-apocalypse wasteland land with her Shiba Inu as her only companion. While I've deduced that to be accurate enough, I didn't encapsulate the whole picture here, because all of the aforementioned elements are overlaid with her dog talking to her, or really I should say manically disgorging philosophical lines of inquiry in the hopes of carrying on a conversation about that. It likely doesn't help that it's a minute long each, encouraging the voice actors to talk in this way so not to run over time. We gotta get back to airing my life as a literal bag of feces in another world, quick! Speaking of comedy for the 4th or 5th time in my conscious memory while recording this, the Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting sounds to me like it should be a classic anime-style comedy about a tough guy awkwardly trying to take care of a soft-hearted little child, which is exactly what this is, full stop. And when I say full stop, I mean there's literally no more comedy. The show hinges entirely on the humorous image of a Yakuza mobster being a babysitter. Get it? He's kind of out of place. He normally kills people, but he has to watch over some fucking kid. Toru Kirishima, the Yakuza killer man, is tasked by his boss to take care of his daughter, Yaika Sakuragi, because Boss Man believes it will teach the violently ambitious Kirishima some responsibility. Great parenting, leveraging your daughter as a tool to train a dangerous criminal while her mom dies in the hospital. No, really, I couldn't see it any other way. The plot progression then slams you over the head with grueling situations where Kirishima is out of place and trying to do his best, all while never making an attempt at additional humor. I was so bored I thought it was funny to point out that Yaika's aunt brought over a gift of rolled omelet because it's her favorite food. And while rolled omelets are hilarious, that's not funny. Nobody thinks this is funny. So they're walking down the alleyway at some point and two thugs plan on jumping Kirishima and holding Yaika hostage so they can kill him. Jesus, man. Kirishima, sensing their presence, tells Yaika to play red light green light with him. And while she's looking away, he beats their skulls in and appears to fuck this guy in the ass to assert dominance. Then Yaika hides that her school is having an open house for parents because she knows neither of her biological creators can attend. And so Yaika is forced to color her fucking tree all alone in school while everybody around her keeps going on and on about how much they love their parents. Look, mommy, I drew us, our family, together, as always. Boy, I sure would hate it if I didn't have parents right here with me right now. I love having parents. But then, here to save the day, Kirishima arrives just in time to compliment Yaika's drawing as every young, fertile, single mom in the building fawns over the rugged, presumably father expressing affection. Wait a minute, this guy's onto something. But then some people are like, who's this guy? And he's like, no, I'm not the dad. I'm actually just here because her dad's a powerful criminal busy with work. I mean, I'm a criminal, not her dad. I mean, I was just killing two guys on my way here. I mean, yes, I'm her dad. That's me, dad. Then Yaika shows her dad the drawing back home and thanks Kirishima for being a thoughtful person. I should point out that I think this show is trying to be one of the old father-daughter mangas, but I mean, it kind of loses some of that impact when she does still have a dad that she goes and talks to immediately anyway. So I also think it's kind of weak if it's trying to be that. Really was hoping for more here, but honestly a bit of a letdown. Christ, that's a weak ending line on my part. Wait, I can still recover. Shit penis! There we go. Nailed it. Sometimes I ask God at night why I am physically incapable of looking at the title Fuuto PI and not instead reading Fuuta Penis. I ask why I was created in such a way that this is the direction I have taken and what it really has to do with that thing they call fate. My next questions usually dive into what the hell I just watched. The answer is, broadly speaking, an adaptation of a manga that is itself a direct sequel to the live-action Kamen Rider W. I'll be blunt, I've never actually watched any of the original Kamen Riders. I've always just understood it to be one of those originating Sentai works that everybody's at least heard of. But, and maybe you guys can enlighten me here, is it always like this? Like 3 genres at once, I mean. I'm gonna spoil parts of the first 2 episodes, self-contained mystery here by the way, so skip ahead if you would rather see it on your own. The anime is a Power Rangers thing as expected. A monster appears in town using a magic item, and Kamen Rider fights it. It's also a show about magic because the Windy City, Fuuto, is apparently full of magic artifacts that turn people into monsters with roads for tongues. It's actually just this guy with a road for a tongue because his power creates pathways, which is pretty neat design work. It's also a crime mystery drama series because Kamen Rider Guy is, first and foremost, a private investigator, thus the PI in penis. People struggling with the supernatural come to Shotaro's office to find clues about their encounters, or in my viewing experience, find some sweet supernatural puss. I failed to mention that Detective Shotaro is only half of the Kamen Rider supersuit, the other half being a quieter, more calculating man named Philip. I really don't have a reason to bring this up, however, other than the fact that his name is just Philip. Yep, Shotaro and Philip, never seen apart. A team to the end. Shotaro and Philip. Why is his name just Philip? Anyway, I guess I shouldn't really say a hell of a lot more about plot devices here as it is a mystery show and I'm already probably saying more than necessary. But yeah, a mystery show where supersuit motorbike riding cop solves magic monster crimes. Like Digimon Cyber Sleuth, but I like Digimon more. Or Batman solely because he has a bat cave that he rides into with a bat bike, or what is it, a batter cycle? Fuck you. Fuuto Penis, goddammit, I was so close. Looks real nice with some vivid scenery and action that carries the eye coming comfortably along. It's a little overwhelming for the uninitiated Kamen Rider virgin, and I have no solid evidence in my pockets indicating I understand certain concepts any better if I were a Kamen Rider nerd, but maybe it's the truth and you'd get more out of watching its prequel, since it's a sequel to a not anime. But I don't talk about things that aren't Japanese cartoons yet. Heading in a direction that should be quite evident by now as lacking any and all organization, I'm going to talk about the other idol show and not in the same vicinity as Phantom of the Idol or Shine On, another potentially reasonable order of operation as it shares the word shine. Shine Post is an idol show. That's it, that's all I got. Wait, no, I can do this. Shine Post is comparable to Idols from I think winter 2021 because it focuses on a smaller group of girls trying to make a name for themselves in the uphill climb to popularity. Main differences include Idols being a comedy where Shine On takes a more risk-free approach and touches upon recognizable themes of persistence, work ethic, and companionship. Not to say Idols doesn't do this, but Shine On is basically a sports anime, aka nothing new or especially distinctive. Fortunately, I am, as always, more inclined to like a show about anime girls spending time together than anime boys. And I don't know if it's exclusively because I like to smell girls' hair or, wait, what was I talking about? Girl shows tend to lean into a more wholesome orientation, less abundance of overtly masculine conflict, more deliberate, cute, comfy emphasis even when facing challenges. Also, singing and dancing is subjectively better than sports, which is why I like this one more than Extreme Hearts still, I think, but neither are anything I'm going to remember after finishing this sentence. Real quick, it's about a horribly named group, Tings, consisting of maid overseas in a factory Honoka Kosaka, real name Haru Nabatame, increasingly autistic in a kind of funny, endearing way, and lightly practiced jokester Kyoka Tamaki, and disingenuously overconfident and explosive Ryu Seibu, the only one whose design I like because her hair is cool. Maybe I shouldn't leave the joke about smelling hair, and now that I said that, that's not a good look, is it? Oh well. Between the three, Haru is the only one that shines according to shine-detecting living polygraph machine and new idol manager Naoki Hinase. He takes them on as manager because he was fired from his previous job for being too perfect, and all the less competent women in his office were getting pissed about how good at his job he was. Am I awake right now? What the fuck? Am I being red-pilled by an idol anime? People fear me because I'm too smart. I'm intimidating because of my big pulsating Jimmy Neutron brain. Shining, I assume, means that Haru is not a filthy fucking liar like these other two, by the way, so Naoki thinks they can make something of themselves. But not before watching them dance shittily alone in a big room with uncomfortably quiet music in the background. Looks like you almost fell there. Were you guys trained for this? There's two other girls that are important, I think, but I didn't watch the second episode. This one's purple, though.
Hey, is that one purple?
I like purple. So anyways, strive for the top, be the best you can be, don't get fired from your job and die in the streets, obey the law or else, that kind of thing. It likes love life money. One fascination that the internet needs no introduction to is cats. Yep, it's the law of the land around these parts to love cats, whether you're an existentially anxious greater than or equal to sign college student, or a newborn infant using an iPad gifted by your inattentive parents for the first time. And it's no wonder, given that they're the smartest, strongest, coolest, cutest, and might I say most suave and handsome beings in your known universe, especially the ethereal ones just off the top of my head. Cats also hold a special presence in the world of animation, and one of many reasons for this is their flexibility in behavior and body. It's truly remarkable how one can animate a cat to be at one time an amorphous, wide-eyed blob clumsily performing absolute fuckery around the house, and at another time a sly predator moving smoothly beneath the shadows to stalk its prey, both unquestionably recognizable as cats despite their night and day qualities. There are plenty of examples of the second kind of portrayal, but I'm actually stuck trying to find one in particular that I remember where the antagonistic cat was animated and drawn to emphasize very snake-like features, with long fangs and slithery motion. For the life of me, I can't find it, but if you know what I'm talking about, please tell me. But in the shapeless, boneless blob category, we have Nights with a Cat, another short-form series this season. It's based on a 4-coma comic about, you guessed it, a cat. To be more precise, it's a fat, lovable house cat who looks to be on ketamine, owned by a girl, also on ketamine, whose older brother helps take care of that cat. Everybody in this show needs to slow down with the severely eye-dilating drug abuse. Episodes revolve around the guy doing stuff at home while he watches cat do stupid cat things. It's got a cute, if not somewhat scary art style with high quality cat animation. There's no lack of this kind of content online as we previously discussed, but one thing that comes to mind is that old web series Simon's Cat. It's basically that, but anime. Following a similar length, albeit longer than Night with a Cat's 1-minute runtime, is Hanabi-chan wa Okuregachi. This one's a comedy about a man who inherits a pachinko parlor housing many slot machines for gambling your meager salary away. However, because the casino has been unattended to for quite some time, some of the machines took it upon themselves to become living objects, Tsukumogami, and just fuck around the store and its surroundings. Now that manager's back in town, the now Moe Girl gambling devices are considered employees who help reopen the business, some begrudgingly. This one's named Hanabi. She's a fireworks-themed patch slot with flashy explosive motifs in her pupils, and a good-for-nothing attitude who's put in charge of the front desk. Here we have Versus, a boisterous and rowdy short-stack One-san who beat the shit out of a local bear, taming him and recruiting him as another wage slave to assist in customer floor service. Finally, we have the best one, Thunder, a true RR One-san with a violently protective streak and the ability to call upon the power of Thor. When she's not busy making me question how to go about making babies with an inanimate object, she's serving customers hot drinks made by hand, literally because she's a walking electric kettle. From this point on, it's a slice of life about what I just described, focusing on the antics of the newly hired demon-possessed fruit machines. Exquisite character designs and cute comic timing summarize how I'd go about describing it overall. In a shockingly similar vein, and possibly my #1 series this season, is Chimimo. Also following a trio of atypically designed sisters, Chimimo carries a kind of Sanrio aesthetic with a hellish twist. The girls are presented with a bunch of demon blobbies who summon their brethren at the mention of the underworld, so that they may all bounce around this mortal realm and snuggle up to the youngest Onigami sibling Maid, whose kind heart flutters at the opportunity to look after these satanic mochis. Middle sister Hazuki doesn't seem to mind all that much so long as she can drunkenly stumble around the house after a long day of work. Love her fashion sense and alcoholism. Then, unsurprisingly, there's eldest One-san Mutsumi, who manages much of the housework as a pseudo-mommy to her sisters, acting as their protector when needed. Like I said, shockingly similar. Also, oldest to youngest order of favoritism on my part all the same. But all three sisters are very appealing characters. Their wholesome closeness as family with individual comedic personalities made me feel genuinely nostalgic for the interactions and unique quirks of Azumanga Daio's tight-knit and flawlessly put-together cast. Maybe it's a bias that skews my otherwise infallible perception, though. It's an impossible mountain to overcome comparing anything to Azumanga Daioh after all. Yet still a compliment I do not take lightly. I love these sisters, but I think the experience is amplified by the true narrative. See, I also have a fond recollection of Keroro Gunso, a manga about a family who takes in a group of alien frogs determined to take over Earth with their mighty armada. Of course they suck fat piss at that because they're incompetent, but the characters surrounding the frogs, and more strongly than Chimimo's demons, the frogs themselves, are fantastic in much the same way. Our Sergeant Keroro in this case, however, is Jigoku, a mighty demon commanding the evil Chimimo to conquer the Earth. You are seeing where this is going, yes? Jigoku can't do anything right, and the Chimimo have ultimately decided they like chilling with the Onigami family. After saving a downtrodden Jigoku using their Mephistophelian power to turn into a raft, Jigoku compromises to stay with the Chimimo in the Onigami family's toolshed as a live-in pet/worker because he cannot return to hell empty-clawed. Of course, he's not done yet. Despite their compassion, Jigoku will still definitely for sure vanquish humanity. You know, eventually. Double slapping me with some serious youthful sentimentality, Chimimo is an unanticipated joy. Just glancing over it, I thought it'd just be one of those children's shorts made in Flash or something, which is downright inaccurate. Don't let this go unnoticed. If you've heard me talk about my preferences in shows before, it should come as no surprise that something as gaudy and colorful as Yurei Deco has caught my eye like a laser pointer. What an astounding world it is to stare at, so much confusion to take in. Yurei Deco might just be the most happy-go-lucky cyberpunk dystopian world I've ever heard of. We're talking so far into the future Orwellian nightmare that almost everybody doesn't even seem to notice. And it's not all that shocking, as with any cyberpunk setting, technology has created such accessible convenience, it's fairly easy to simply overlook the literal mutual surveillance culture enforced, in part, by making it a requirement for every citizen to choose between stabbing into their eyeballs AR tech or simply wearing it so that they may participate in modern society in the first place. And to great effect, I might add, 97% of the population is already doing it, so you might as well too, or else. That setting, by the way, is an island called Tom Sawyer, so you know these guys have read a book or two. The city, while coded in extravagant digital constructs that formulate a reality of sorts, is quite bare bones if you squint at it, really hammering it in that in Tom Sawyer we really do live in a total shithole if not for our augmented amenities dressing it up. And our big brother Overlord takes the form of a legend about an all-seeing giant now manifested as a peacock whose feathers resemble eyes to let you know you're still being observed, all authority figures representing its display. But make no mistake, look around and you'll see happy faces despite the censorship, like our lead character Barry, a young girl generally ignorant to what goes on in her very own home, whose curiosity has led her and her buddies on the hunt for the mysterious Phantom Zero. Phantom referring to the fact that nobody knows who and where they are, but also meaning Yurei, a word denoting a ghost as much as it does a government code for a person who should not exist because they disrupt the establishment and disregard the hardline census. Discord moderators are what we all call these authoritarian police dogs, and the thing they like to monitor most would be this world's social and monetary credit system. Reddit upvotes. Like, actually, their karma, hearts, that you are visibly labeled with at all times. A world where your tangible value as a person is determined by the amount of likes you accumulate on the internet. Not so dissimilar to what your mom warns you about when you try to blow up on TikTok. I'd hate to see what happens to those of us getting our comments drowned in downvotes. If Reddit's anything to go by, I think I know what happens. Phantom Zero is infamous for taking yours. In fact, it seems a little too easy to fuck up this cyber system considering how effortlessly this kid here, with a frantic, brief, and repetitive speech pattern that subtitlers seem to make more annoying sounding than necessary, can, let's say, hack your fucking eyeballs by secretly plugging a wire into your head. Might not be such a great idea to make the VR chat mandatory after all. The mystery unfolds as these two meet and begin unraveling the secrets of their world and those who threaten its stranglehold over its people. I've heard people accuse this show of being unoriginal, and I have to ask why? Because it questions the uprising and escapability of technology? Sure, nothing new at a glance, but this only becomes more relevant to us by the second. It's how you portray this and spin a narrative with that structure that makes all the difference, and I think on visuals alone, Yurei Deco does so fantastically. But I'm accounting for more than the vibrancy, eccentric movement, and cutely atypical science Saru character designs. Yes, Yurei Deco is reminiscent of, say, Digimon Cyber Sleuth Eden, but what I'm presented with is fun and unique in many, many ways. In Tom Sawyer, everybody can interact with the same supplemental reality, or maybe even make their own simultaneously. It's so ingrained into daily life, everybody has what we would call today a command of technology so advanced it might as well be magic. You tell me where a programmable paper airplane that Pokeball captures data can be found outside of this show, and I'll still say you're wrong and this show's got it going on, but I do think you probably can't point me to that exact thing at least. Enhancing the experience tenfold is the expectedly electronic music brought to us by no less than 3 artists, a key factor in being a show that wants to stand out from my perception, and this of course excludes the intro-outro songs, praiseworthy alone as they are. Dai Sato is the man responsible for the original concept, screenplay, and composition presented, which makes a lot of sense when you realize some of his earliest work in anime was scripting for Ghost in the Shell's standalone complex, as well as Ergo Proxy under a decade later. This is a fella who knows his way around a cyberpunk anime. Also on board for that original concept is the director of Keep Your Hands Off Aizuken, and much more, Masaki Yuasa, probably explaining why its overall style gives off that same Aizuken impression. Who is Phantom Zero? What do they want? Where do I spend my Miiverse Yaz to buy an apple head avatar? Or maybe like an extremely muscular and well-endowed cat Adonis, you know, to match my real-life appearance, or at least my Second Life account maybe. All this and more to be found in the world of adventure and childlike wonder alongside fascist horrors that is Yurei Deco.